We're continuing this lecture from week 1 notes. We're going to talk about integers or signed numbers in this lecture. Just a reminder again that you should have these notes printed and in front of you while you listen to this lecture. You can pause and rewind if you need to listen to things again or think about something. You'll see I've put numbers onto my number line. We have 0 in the center of our number line. And then our positive numbers are moving to the right and our negative numbers moving to the left. This is always how we label numbers on a horizontal number line. And when we're adding, we're going to move towards the right. And when we're subtracting, we're going to move towards the left. If you look at the questions in the first row here, they should be pretty straightforward. You know the answers. You may have a little more difficulty when the numbers are both negative. Let's look at our number line and see if we can use that. This asks us to start at -3. So we're going to, -6. So we're going to start at -6. And then we're going to subtract 3. Remember, when we're subtracting, we're going to the left. We end up at -9. Let's look at -2, subtract 4. Start at -2. We're subtracting 4. What do you think about -5, subtract 7? I hope you can see the pattern here. When the numbers are both positive, because this is a +6 plus 3, +2 plus 4. When the numbers were both positive, we added, and our answer was positive. When the numbers were both negative, we added, and our answer was negative. So we have a rule here that we can use. When the signs in front of all of the numbers are the same, we're going to add and keep the sign. Pause your video and answer the questions here. So I filled in my number line again. You might want to do so as well. Let's answer the questions in the first row. We know how to do these. 6 minus 3, 4 minus 2, 7 minus 5, 8 minus 2. But now compare them to the questions just below. We have the same numbers, 6 and 3. But in this question, the 6 is negative and the 3 is positive. If we use our number line here, it means we're going to start at -6 and we're adding 3. The answer is -3. Let's go down to the next one. This time we have a +3, subtract 6. We start at +3 and subtract 6, we end up at -3 again. In the final question, we're starting at -3 and adding 6. In every question, the answer was either positive or -3. How do we know whether it's going to be positive or negative? Well, first of all, I'm going to make sure every number has a sign written. We know that's a +6, subtract 3, -6, add 3, +3, subtract 6, -3 add 6. Okay, let's look more closely. +6 is bigger, or rather not bigger, but there's more positive number than -3, and my answer is positive. I have more negatives, and my answer is negative. I have more negatives, the answer is negative. I have more positives, the answer is positive. Do you know about absolute value? The absolute value of a number describes its distance from 0. 6 is 6 units away from 0. The absolute value of -6 is also 6. 6 is 6 units from 0 in the other direction. So what I see happening here is that the number with the greatest absolute value is the number whose sign we use. The absolute value of 6 is greater than the absolute value of -3. So my answer is positive. The absolute value of -6 is greater than the absolute value of +3. So my answer is negative. If I look at the next column of questions, 4, the absolute value of 4 is greater than the absolute value of 2. My answer was positive. -4 has a greater absolute value. The answer will be negative. +4 has a greater absolute value. My answer is positive. -4 has a greater absolute value. My answer is negative. And in each case, we subtract. +7 has a greater absolute value. What about the next one? Will it be positive or negative? This one has a greater absolute value. The next one. And the last question in this column. And again, we subtract 7 minus 5. Try the last column, fill in those answers. So we have another rule that we can use. When the signs in front of the numbers are different, we're going to subtract. And we're going to keep the sign of the, and I'm going to use quotation marks here, of the larger number. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes you're going to see questions with more than one addition sign, more than one subtraction sign between each other. I'm going to suggest that you always change it to one sign. And we're going to change the signs 2 at a time. 2 plus signs beside each other become a plus sign. 2 negative signs beside each other become a plus sign. So when the signs are the same, we have a plus sign. When you have a plus and a minus sign beside each other, the order doesn't matter. We have subtraction. When the signs are different, we're going to make it a minus sign. Now, I said we're going to look at 2 signs at a time. So these 2 minus signs become a plus. And then we have a plus minus. That's a minus sign. These 2 are different. It's a minus sign. Then I have two minus signs. It becomes a plus sign. So we only want one sign between the numbers. These signs are beside each other. They're different. These signs are beside each other. They're different. These signs are beside each other. They are the same. These signs are beside each other. They are the same. Okay, now we have to remember that rule for adding and subtracting. These signs are different for every one of them. We have a positive and a negative, a positive and a negative and a positive. For each one of these, we're going to subtract. So I can just think about 3 minus 2, but the absolute value of -3 is larger, so my answer is negative. 7 minus 4 is 3. The absolute value of 7 is larger, so my answer is negative. 6 minus 4 is 2, but I have more positives. 8 minus 3 is 5. I have more positives. You know, it might be even easier to know that you can rewrite these questions. I could rewrite this as -3 plus 2. Is that easier for you to look at? I can rewrite this as -7 plus 4, as long as the negative sign stays with the number that it's beside. That means this becomes 6 minus 4, which is definitely easier to look at. And this one, 8 minus 3. You may want to practice rewriting questions so that you can look at them more easily. Now, the rules for adding and subtracting take practice. If you're not comfortable adding and subtracting with signed numbers, you need to spend some time with that because we don't use a calculator in this course. You're not permitted a calculator. You just need to get used to looking at those numbers and figuring it out. And then it becomes confusing because we also have to talk about multiplying and dividing with signed numbers. Again, we have a rule. If there is an even number of negative signs, then our answer is positive. If we have an odd number of negative signs, the answer is negative. So the first thing you should do is count the negative signs. And then you should multiply or divide. So for example, in this first question, there's one negative sign. That's an odd number. My product will be negative. Then I can just multiply. 1 times 2 times 3 is 6 times 4 is 24. Count the negative signs. 1, 2, 3, 4. My answer will be positive, and I already know that it's 24. Count the negative signs. An odd number. Count the negative signs. An odd number. We're going to stop there, but I do want to point out a couple of practice sheets at the end of your notes here. There's a number line for those of you who've printed this that might be useful while you practice working with with adding and subtracting integers. There's a multiplication chart. If you haven't memorized your multiplication facts, you should fill in the ones you need to practice and use this while you multiply. And there are some integer addition drills. The signs are the same, so we're going to add, and the answer is negative. The signs are different, so we're going to subtract, but we have more positive. The answers for these can be found on your class Moodle page. Each one of these boxes should be completed in under 5 minutes. If you can do that, then you know that your addition of integers is pretty good. We have also an integer multiplication drill. Again, you should be able to complete this in under 5 minutes. Remember, we look at the sign first. We know it's going to be negative, and then we multiply. 9 times 6 is 54, carry the 5. 54 plus 5 is 59. Next answer will be positive. 9 times 2 is 18, carry the 1. 27 plus 1, 28. So take a look at these drills, practice them if you need the extra work. And once you've done a bit of practice with your integers, continue watching the videos for this week.